All right, thank you for joining us here at the First Alert Desk. We are following news that we first broke to you here on Atlanta News First overnight. Funding has been approved for the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center. It's commonly known by critics as Cop City, but this is the latest step in what has been a growing controversy, definitely one of the biggest, arguably, for the Andre Dickens administration. We're following really the latest of what's happening here. Early this morning, the council voted 11-4 in favor of the funding during a nearly 14-hour public comment. We first brought that to you at 1 o'clock and followed it through till the very end, bringing you that final vote earlier this morning. And we're joined here by reporter Patrick Quinn, who's been following this story really for quite some time. But Patrick, we were talking about this in our morning meeting. A lot of people not very familiar with what this controversy has been. This has been several years now, and now the vote really being that final green light to push things into effect. Hopefully, I wanted to bring you on here so you could break down exactly the timeline of all of this and what this vote means for what's next for the Public Safety Training Center.
And Maria, I think one of the hardest things about this story is for how long it's gone on and all the nuances, the ebbs and flow. And so for many people, they've just got lost on where we're at in this. Was this already approved? Is the money already allocated? And so I think that's what's created a lot of confusion. And for a lot of the public, they've just got lost on all the developments. But here, let me just break down kind of where we're at and right, how long this has gone back. This resolution was initially proposed September 2021 as part of the Keisha Lance Bottoms administration for the city of Atlanta. And now here we are, roughly 2 years later, it has finally been approved. And what this does is it greenlights the development of this project with $31 million in capital investment going straight to the Atlanta Police Foundation to the development of this project. In addition, the city will also be on the hook for a leaseback agreement, which will be 30 years at $1.2 million per year, which brings the grand total of public financing to be $67 million. And that is what was approved in the wee hours of this morning, despite a lot of opposition. This is the most opposition the city has seen on any issue in roughly a decade or more. Again, yeah, over 13 hours of public comment. There was over 7 hours of public comment a few weeks ago, and then there was over 17 hours of public comment when this resolution was initially approved or brought forward. So yes, a lot of back and forth. But now what this does is it allows for construction to start, and they're expecting that to start August of this year, with the first phase of this project opening December 2024. So in a little over a year and a half, that's when this first part of the project, you're seeing some of the construction sites right now. First, they will open up the class training area where leadership and training will go for police and fire personnel. And then after that, they'll open up different phases of this site, including what will be 125 acres of parkland. One thing that they really stressed, I was able to tour this site, is that they want a lot of it to be accessible to the public, so that you can come, you can walk the trails around this area. You can also hold community meetings in this space. But all of this came to a head yesterday and into this morning, and it has now officially been passed. The mayor, he did just release a statement earlier this morning. He, of course, was a huge advocate of this project, and he said it was a major milestone for the city. He also said it will be a national model for police reform with the most progressive training and curriculum in the country. So while there has been a lot of opposition against this, the mayor has been a strong supporter of this. We're also trying to get new information from the police chief. He obviously says this will be a huge avenue for recruitment and retaining officers. So we're going to try and talk with Chief Darren Shearbaum a little bit later today as well.
And I think, there's been many critiques, around this development, but the newest one, and one that this vote was focused on, was the money that many people thought was going to be a much smaller amount, and now accumulating, as you said, to this $67 million, of which taxpayers will likely be responsible for $30 million. That is a huge jump from what was originally discussed.
Yeah, and actually, taxpayers will be on the hook for all 67 million. The 31 million is a immediate payment, a one-time capital investment. And I actually went back and looked at the press release when this was initially proposed. Just yesterday, I was re-looking at this press release, and it said that the public would be on the hook for either this capital investment or the leaseback agreement. And what has inevitably happened is now the public is on the hook for both the capital investment and the leaseback agreement. So that's where that huge frustration really surrounds with funding, is that, right, the city has been preaching this $30 million number when really, because the city's on the hook for both the leaseback agreement and the capital investment, it is $67 million. And I was able to talk with Doug Shipman, he's the council president, yesterday about how the city's handled this. And he admitted, we've made some mistakes. We really did not handle things well in terms of messaging. We weren't as early as we could have been when it comes to how much the city is actually on the hook for, and that's something that he recognized. He also recognized that after 13 hours of public comment, so many people opposing this project, that there's going to be a lot of concern around public trust with the council, and that's something that he knows he's going to have to improve upon in the weeks and months ahead as this project continues to be built. We've never seen anything like this. We've never seen public comment go into the wee hours of the morning like we saw this morning. So he recognizes that there's gonna be a lot of public trust that needs to be improved upon moving forward.
I wanted to travel back a little, and you touched upon this, to the Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms era, the beginning of most of this. Some of the initial critiques that were brought up was environmental concerns of militarization here. Obviously, you have both sides in support of this development. Some sides clearly protesting, holding demonstrations, being vocal about their opposition. How has that grown? You've had a chance to follow this and talk to both sides and really be on the ground throughout all of this.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that the opposition against this project, it's multi-layered, it's multifaceted, it is environmental. There are a lot of people against police brutality, and they fear that this site will only enhance that. There are a lot that are concerned with environmental discrimination and just recognizing that this is being built in a black community. So that's been one of the harder parts of covering this, is those against this, they look really different. I mean, when just being in City Hall yesterday, there were doctors wearing lab coats set to give public comment. There were children who gave public comment. There were young people, old people, black people, white people. The Native Americans gave public comment talking about the land that this is being built on. So it's just multi-layered, and that's been really interesting, and that's part of the nuance of this issue. Also, a lot of environmental concerns, certainly. A lot of people were camping on this site for a long time. You mentioned the militarized nature of this. That was a huge concern by so many people, that this would just be a site that would train officers to use military and militaristic tactics as a way of policing. And actually yesterday, as part of a last-minute amendment, one council member proposed and just clarified the language that stressed that no explosive training would happen on this site and no helicopter training would happen on this site. And that amendment was passed. So there is language now in this final resolution, final legislation that was passed, that really stresses this will not be a site for militaristic training, and that was really important for some council members. While they voted for this, they wanted to make sure that it is really being used for progressive training, and that's something that the mayor harped on as well.
And, as we continue to follow this, which we have extensive coverage, by the way, on our Atlanta News First app, on our Atlanta News First.com website, if you wanted to dive deep into all of the details and developments that have come out of this over the past few years. What's next for people that are wanting to follow this, the taxpayers that are concerned about coughing up the payment for this, or maybe they're possibly excited for this new development, whatever their reasons, what should they be looking for next?
Okay, so just logistically, construction, that is next for this project. It will now be built in DeKalb County, and construction starts, the initial phase of it, August 2023 this year, so just in a couple months. And then after that, again, it will open, the first phase of it will open December of 2024. Now, from talking with activists, they have really stressed that despite losing this vote, they're not done. In fact, they've called a press conference tomorrow outside of City Hall to highlight that while they lost this vote, they don't believe that that their fight is over. And even yesterday, we heard it outside and we heard it inside City Hall. Many saying, "If you build it, we will burn it." With the whole idea of if you build this site, now they will go back and burn it down. I mean, we have seen fireworks thrown on this site. We've seen construction equipment burned on this site using Molotov cocktails. So that is a threat I know the city's taking very seriously. We were able to talk with Chief Darren Schierbaum on this site during a tour of this site about a week ago, and he recognized that there have been ongoing threats at the site and that they will continue to monitor those and have officers staged there on the site through the development of construction. And he stressed he doesn't want to have to pull officers from other precincts, from other areas of the city, recognizing that they need to cover crime kind of throughout Atlanta. But he also said we have to be able to protect this project. He just really stressed he sees this as a huge way of retaining officers, of building his department. He would like to see it to get just over 2,000 officers covering the city. Right now we have a little less than 1,700, so maybe 300 more officers could come on board, and he sees this project as a way to help get to that number.
And we'll be following it, of course. I know you are continuing to, just today talk to both sides about the outcome of this vote, and like you mentioned, the next steps. We'll have all of that and more on AtlantaNewsFirst.com and in our Atlanta News First newscast, so make sure you tune in. Thanks so much, Patrick.
Sure.